Hey guys, welcome to another video where we are actually beginning a new cookbook series. We have been working through Weeknights with Giada's. We want to take a little bit of a break from that in order to start this new series, which is still cooking through a cookbook, but for now we are doing the complete Cook's Country TV show cookbook. This is from America's Test Kitchen. This covers, I think, the first 9 seasons of the show. So we were flipping through it and saw a bunch of really neat and hopefully yummy recipes that we came across.
The nice thing about this cookbook is it doesn't only give the recipes, and also each recipe has a picture, which is nice, but it also gives you like little tips for how to cook what you're cooking better. So that's really neat.
But before we get into that, first off, we thank you for tuning in and for liking, commenting, and subscribing if you've done that. If not, we'll wait. Alright, and you'll also see all of our social media stuff down at the bottom of the screen, right around here, maybe. So just take a look at those if you get a chance.
Cover up my face.
It might cover up your face. So take a look at those if you get a chance.
We are very close to 50 subscribers, so we would appreciate you subscribing.
And we are talking about doing a 50 subscribers special, so if we can get there, we'll figure
something out.
Something special.
If you have an idea, leave it in the comments down below.
Absolutely. So let's get into this so that we can get to cooking, because the stuff we've picked out looks pretty interesting, pretty exciting.
You'll notice, sorry I interrupted you, that in the next few videos we'll be wearing the same clothes.
Yeah.
Because we've decided to cook a whole meal, kind of, so we have a main dish, a side, and a vegetable, but we're gonna give you each recipe over the next few weeks.
Right.
So the next few weeks, if you watch all 3 videos, will be a whole meal that you could do.
Exactly. So we're gonna start, and the recipe that we'll be starting with is the pan-fried pork chop. So pretty simple, and let's just go over what the ingredients are that we need for that.
All right, for this recipe, you will need 1 teaspoon garlic powder, half a teaspoon paprika, half a teaspoon salt, half a teaspoon pepper.
I'm noticing a trend.
A 1/4 teaspoon cayenne pepper.
Joelle's scared of cayenne pepper.
So just a little bit. 1 cup all-purpose flour. 4 bone-in pork rib or center cut pork chops. You'll notice we don't have the bone-in because this is actually choice 2.
You're right.
We had a little mishap where the other meat didn't quite make it to the refrigerator.
These things happen.
Uh-oh. 3 slices of bacon. And that's bacon.
That's bacon.
Half a cup of vegetable oil. And that is the ingredient list.
All right, so without further ado, let's
get started.
Jump into it. So for preparing the pork chops, what you want to do is you want to begin by combining the ingredients for the seasoning that goes on the outside of the pork chops. So in a bowl, you're going to combine 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of paprika, half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper.
Don't go crazy with that stuff, it's hot.
Yeah, it can get out of control. But once again, you know your heat level that you enjoy. So if you want
like
this
it spicy, yeah,
to be spicier, then
and if you don't like spice at all, I'm sure you can leave it out.
You can leave it out.
Yep.
I know with other foods, I appreciate the heat as long as it's not overwhelming, so it's not a bad thing to have, but I understand some people don't like that. Then once you have put all that in your dish, you just want to mix it up a little bit and then just sprinkle it over your pork chops after you've wiped them down with a paper towel. So dry them off with a paper towel first.
Right out of the package.
Just to get the extra moisture off of it, and so that the seasoning sticks a little better. Then sprinkle the seasoning across all the pork chops on both sides, and that prepares you before you jump into it.
And we used all of the seasoning mix that it made.
Sometimes when you do these recipes, wherever you get them from, you either have not enough seasoning or way too much. This was a perfect amount of seasoning. Yep. So for 4 pork chops, which is what we did, and that's what the recipe calls for, the amount of seasoning that you make, at least for us, was plenty. Perfect. Yep. It was a good amount. And I think even on some of them was a little bit heavier than others were, but still, it worked out nicely.
So then the next step is you're gonna wanna take a shallow dish. We used a pie plate and it worked perfectly.
Right.
And put 1 cup of flour in that dish, because the next step is you're gonna take the pork chops that you just seasoned and you're going to cover them in flour, dredge them in flour.
Right, and then once you dredge them the first time, you don't want to throw the flour away because you will be using it again.
Right.
But you want to let the pork chops sit for about 10 minutes. That just sets a base layer of
Yeah, and you could
flour.
kind of see the flour was dissolving or maybe getting moist from the
Right.
moisture in the pork chops. So it kind of almost disappeared.
Right.
And
so
then
that's a good way to tell if you're looking at the pork chops and it seems like the flour is gone or almost gone. It's good to dredge a second time. So once that's sat for 10 minutes ish, then dredge them again, and you're pretty much ready at that
yeah,
point.
while the pork chops sat for those 10 minutes after we dredged them in the flour the first time, this is when we went to the stove and we cooked. There's 3 pieces of bacon that they want you to cook in the pan you're going to cook the pork chops in.
Now, you can have that or don't. I mean, I get why it's there.
Yeah, it's adding flavor to the oil to what you're cooking
Right.
the pork chops in.
But honestly, if you're the type of person, I know some people do this, if you're the type of person that kind of keeps bacon grease around, you won't even need this step.
Right, you definitely could do that.
So you can kind of avoid having to waste bacon when it comes to doing that.
Yeah, and our bacon got wasted because it fell on the floor.
I was cleaning up, and the napkin that the bacon was sitting on was stuck to a bowl, and
When you picked up the bowl.
then it went all over the floor.
And we tried to feed it to our cat, and he was like, I'm not having this. He doesn't understand the joy
So-
of bacon.
Sad bacon. Gone.
Sad bacon is sad.
So, anyway.
Back to the cooking.
Back to the cooking.
Once the bacon is crisp and done, and we just tore it up and put it in the
Yeah.
pan in little pieces.
Largely because we couldn't find our kitchen scissors, so it is what it is.
If you watched last week's video,
Yeah.
you'll see that Stuart almost cut himself with scissors, so he's not allowed to have scissors anymore. So he just had to use his hands.
But scissors or tearing it apart.
I'm sure you honestly could have just cooked it in slices too. I don't think it really
Depends
matters.
on how feral you are, really. If you like to feel manly and want to rip bacon apart.
Anyway, once the bacon is cooked, you remove it from the pan, but leave the grease in the pan.
Right.
And-
that is important to do.
Yeah. And to the grease, you're going to add
Half a cup of vegetable oil, olive oil, whatever kind of oil you have on hand. I
Yep.
don't think it really matters. And then you're going to let that cook. Well, you're going to let that warm up on the heat until it starts to smoke.
lightly.
That only takes like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So
it didn't take long at all.
make sure you're paying attention to that because obviously oil and heat, if it gets excessive, it's not a good thing.
Right.
Our smoke detector may have gone off a couple times, but it's fine. Everything's fine. All right.
Just opened a window.
Just so once the oil in the pan is heated up, and then it's time to put the pork chops in. At this point, you want to gently lay them in because they will splatter if you're not careful, and just let them cook for probably about 5 or 6 minutes on each side until a meat thermometer reads about 160 degrees, which is about where pork goes. Or is edible at that.
The recipe says it should take 6 to 8 minutes per side, and I don't think that was off really at
No,
all. I
it
think
was
that's about what it
Probably
took
about
us.
10 to 12 minutes, and it does depend on the size of your pork chops. So
Yep.
obviously larger ones are going to take a little bit longer. But yeah, it wasn't too far off time-wise in getting that cooked. Once they are a fairly dark brown, like they were pretty, then you'll see here that once they're a golden brown and they reach 160 degrees, then take them out, set them on a tray.
Yep, and we just used a meat thermometer that I think we got on Amazon.
Yeah, and ideally you want to serve it right away. So make sure you have your side dishes and things like that done,
Ready to go.
so that the pork chops don't overcook because they will overcook quickly.
Especially if you leave them to sit after you're done.
So you really want to serve those right away. But once that's it. Like that's as far as you need to go. Those are done.
And then as far as cost, I really think this is pretty economical.
Right.
Because if you cook it all, you'll have all of these seasonings.
Yep.
The only thing you might need to get is bacon, and like we said, I don't think that's vital to the recipe. You could leave it out. So really, all you're buying is pork chops, and
Yeah. If
you
have
can really
everything
go
else.
as expensive or as inexpensive as you would like to go.
Right. Now the recipe does recommend bone-in pork chops. We used boneless, and
Because that's what we had.
that's what we had available. And it's still fine. Like either way, just keep an eye on cook times.
Right.
But it is really interesting here that I don't know if you guys have ever cooked pork chops and they like curl in on each other.
Yeah, I think this happens. I mean, it happens sometimes with boneless, but it happens, I think, a whole lot more with the bone-in.
Apparently, what Test Kitchen says that you should do is cut slits in the fatty portion and into the tendons, I think it says. Not a huge slit, but just 2 of them, probably about 1 inch or so apart. And that's supposed to help prevent.
And because they say the reason that they curl up is because the fat and the connective tissue, when it gets hot, it gets like it tightens.
Right.
And so that's why it curls up, because it makes itself smaller. So if you cut through the fat and the connective tissue, it won't tighten like that, and your pork chops will stay flat, which is something that has happened to us before, and that's really neat to know that that's how you fix it.
So there you go. That's your random Test Kitchen fact for the day. So seem to be having those, so it'll be good.
Yeah.
So yeah, cost-wise, pork chops are really inexpensive, as Joel said. I can't remember what we spent on them, but it wasn't more than $6 for the pork chops.
I don't think it was even that.
Right, it may not have even been that much. And if you have all the seasonings that we mentioned, then this is really inexpensive. So yeah, I think that's about it. So that's going to lead us into tasting it.
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do it. All right, so.
It is time to taste the pork chops.
Right, so.
I got a little bit on my fingers when I was taking pictures, and I licked it, and it was delicious. So I have high hopes for these pork chops.
So, in full transparency though, the short pork chops have been sitting for a little bit, so we'll try to keep that in mind when we taste it.
Yeah.
They may be a little overdone. That's easy.
Because we did not, this is not right after they were done cooking.
Right.
It's like half an hour later.
But let's go ahead and let's get ourselves a taste. Alright. You know what? Even after sitting for a little bit, it's still tender, so it's not super overdone. It's moist. Probably not as moist as I would like it, just because it has sat for a bit. But the seasoning's nice.
Yeah, I think it's salty enough for you, but not too salty for me.
Right.
The cayenne pepper adds just a little kick, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, it is a very decent pork chop.
It has a nice little crisp from the flour, doing the flour. It's really nice.
Yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you rate this?
I give it a 4.
Yeah, I think as far as pork chops go, it's a good recipe. It's fairly easy to make.
And you should have pretty much everything.
Right. I mean, if you've got a basic spice rack with paprika, cayenne pepper, salt, pepper, garlic powder, these are all the basics of this. So you really just need the pork chops, and
that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably even make do without the bacon fat and just replace it with something else.
That might add a little something. Though.
It might, but that's up to you on that. But I would, if you don't have it, but you have pork chops available, don't go out of your way to get bacon just for that one step.
Right.
Yeah, so I would agree on the 4 out of 5. I think that's a good pork chop, a good quick meal too. Like if that's what you're doing, and pairing it with nothing as complicated as we did when we did these videos.
You could do applesauce and a steamed veggie, and you
some
could
mac and cheese, something like that. Yep. But yeah, that was definitely worthwhile. So if you have tried this recipe, let us know in the comments below what you thought of it. And until next time, you will see, next time you will see the sides that we did with this, one of them anyway. So keep an eye out for that in a week. And I think that'll do it for us for this cooking video.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Later. Okay, so preparing preparing them. Oh Lord.
Please make these pork chops
Please
good.
make these pork chops
Please.
yummy.